Welcome to another moderately useful video. Today we're looking at this 1988 Olympia Coffex or Maximatic. This is part 3. We are taking the boiler apart and modernizing a few things. This is the old school mechanical pressurestat. It's really kind of fancy. The mechanism is really cool, but they're not super reliable, and I've read in a few places that people like to replace them with electronic ones, which is what I'm going to do. And here's the replacement. It's, what, a quarter the size? Pretty nice. Those are super standard. Lots and lots and lots of entry-level machines use them. Here I'm removing the boiler, so there's a few screws. A couple at the bottom, one on the side, one on the top. And here you can witness me stripping a screw. I messed up. It's not too bad, but I should have looked in the back because there's a nut. And loosening the nut would have prevented that from happening. Alright, it looks like there's nothing I can do, so I'm going to break it using a screw extractor. Those work really, really well. And here is the offending article. It's a little rusty, so I don't know if it's really my fault. It wasn't too bad. Once again, we have to remove the heat exchanger top plate to free up the boiler. Before you remove the boiler, you have to remove some wires at the bottom, mostly for the heating element. Once again, here, no surprises. The screws were on, pretty tight, but nothing crazy. And the inside of the boiler has been descaled really well. So, yeah, I'm really happy. The heating element appears to be original, which is really kind of mind-blowing. The gasket might also be. It's completely brittle. Really terrible gasket. So I'm going to replace it. I mean, come on, look at this. There's no way this didn't leak. I scraped off the cap and sanded it a little bit in places just to make sure it's completely flat. And now it's time to put it back. This screw is a little tricky to put back. You need pretty fine needle nose pliers. One thing I realized that I could have done this whole thing without taking the boiler out because there's a little access plate underneath that I didn't know about. Everything is connected, everything looks good. Now it's time to put everything back. You've seen me do this in part 2. It's pretty much the same, just the second time around. One thing to note is that this little steam wand only swivels from left to right and also has a small gasket. So here's the new gasket I got, which is slightly bigger, made of silicone, so hopefully it should be heat resistant. And I know I'm using a Torx screwdriver on Allen screws. But that's all I have, and that's the only thing that reaches in there. And I'm going to replace this power cord later. I think it's a bit old, it's a little stiff, and they're really cheap and easy to replace, so why not? And here we're making sure that everything still works after putting it back together, and it does. Seems to be running a little bit hot, so I'm going to decrease the trigger point for the pressure stat, which is on the side here. I use a small screwdriver. And you can see the light turn off, which means the trigger point has been changed. Steam is really good, nice and dry. And it still works. Awesome. Let's take care of this crusty power cord. As usual, if you don't know what you're doing with electricity, hire a professional. I did take a moment off camera to put some rust proofing on this part, which was a little bit rusty and exposed to water. And I put some new foam so that the pump doesn't vibrate too much. Let's accelerate this a little bit because it's kind of boring. It's just putting screws back in. And now we get to the point where we replace the cord. I've prepared it. Here's what it looks like. It's molded so it's waterproof. So unfortunately I had to break the previous strain relief that was on the previous cord. So I'm putting a new one in just to make sure the cord doesn't move too much inside the machine. All right, and I think we are done here. All the gaskets have been replaced. The electrical stuff is good. So I'll see you next time. Bye.